In the early 1800s, the Horizon's Edge, a sturdy merchant ship, set sail from the bustling docks of London, destined for the distant shores of the Caribbean. Captain Elias Turner, a seasoned mariner with years of experience, commanded the ship with a loyal crew, many of whom had served with him for years. The voyage promised to be uneventful, but the sea has a way of turning even the most routine journeys into nightmares. The first sign of trouble appeared on the seventh night. The sea, which had been calm, turned eerily still, and a dense fog enveloped the ship. Visibility dropped to mere feet, and the crew grew uneasy. The silence was broken only by the creaking of the ship's timbers and the soft lapping of waves against the hull. Then, from the depths of the fog, the Horizon's Edge encountered another vessel, a massive, decaying ship with tattered sails and a hull covered in barnacles and seaweed. The ship appeared out of nowhere, gliding silently through the water as if it were a phantom. Captain Turner ordered the crew to hail the mysterious ship, but there was no response. As they drew closer, the crew could see figures moving on the deck, shadowy forms that seemed to glide rather than walk. A chill ran down the spine of every sailor as they realized the crew of the ghostly ship was not among the living. Captain Turner, against his better judgment, decided to board the ghost ship. He selected a handful of his most trusted men, and together they rowed over to the other vessel. As they climbed aboard, the stench of decay and death filled their nostrils. The deck was covered in a thin layer of slime, and the air was thick with an unnatural cold. The ship seemed to pulse with a life of its own, the wood groaning and creaking, as if it were alive. The crew searched the ship, finding no sign of recent life, only the skeletal remains of sailors still dressed in the rotting remnants of 18th century uniforms. In the captain's quarters, they discovered a logbook. The last entry, dated over 50 years earlier, described how the ship had been cursed after plundering a mysterious island in the Caribbean. The captain had ignored warnings from the island's inhabitants and taken a chest filled with gold and jewels. The entry ended abruptly, with the captain writing that his crew had begun to fall ill, and the dead were rising from their graves. As Captain Turner read the logbook, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door shut. The air grew colder, and the crew could hear whispers echoing through the ship, voices that seemed to come from the very walls. The men hurried back to the deck, but the lifeboat they had used to board the ship was gone. The Horizon's Edge was nowhere in sight, and the fog had thickened into an impenetrable wall. The crew of the Horizon's Edge was now trapped aboard the ghost ship, with no means of escape. As the hours passed, the fog grew thicker and the ship began to change. The wood turned black and the sails filled with a wind that shouldn't have existed in the stillness. The whispers grew louder, and the shadowy figures that had once been distant now moved closer, their eyes glowing with a malevolent light. One by one, the crew began to succumb to the ship's curse. They saw visions of their worst fears, heard the voices of lost loved ones calling to them from the sea, and felt an overwhelming sense of dread that crushed their spirits. Those who resisted were dragged into the depths of the ship by the ghostly crew, never to be seen again. Captain Turner fought to maintain his sanity, but the ship was relentless. He discovered that the cursed treasure was still aboard, hidden deep within the ship's hold. Desperate, he tried to return the treasure to the sea, but the ship's ghostly captain appeared before him, a skeletal figure with hollow eyes and a voice like the howling wind. The ghostly captain revealed that the treasure was bound to the ship and could never be removed. The only way to break the curse was to take the ship to the island from which the treasure was stolen and return it to its rightful place. Determined to break the curse, Captain Turner took the helm of the ghost ship. The crew that remained, now half mad and desperate, followed him. The ship, now a vessel of the damned, sailed through the fog, guided by an unseen force. Days turned into nights and time lost all meaning. The ship's course was unchanging, leading them ever closer to the island of doom. When they finally reached the island, the sky was dark and the sea was black as ink. The island itself was shrouded in mist, with jagged rocks jutting out of the water like the teeth of some ancient sea monster. As they approached the shore, the ghostly crew began to disappear, their forms dissipating into the mist. Captain Turner and his remaining men carried the cursed treasure to the island's heart, a place marked by ancient stones and twisted trees. As they placed the treasure back where it belonged, the ground shook, and a deafening roar echoed through the air. The curse was broken, but at a terrible cost. The island began to sink into the sea, dragging the ship and its crew with it. Captain Turner, resigned to his fate, stood at the helm as the waters closed in around him. The last thing he saw was the ghostly figure of the ship's former captain, now at peace, saluting him as the ship was swallowed by the depths. Years later, sailors would tell tales of the ghost ship that roamed the seas, a vessel crewed by the dead, searching for the island that could never be found. Some claim to have seen it, a black ship with tattered sails, gliding silently through the fog. Those who encountered it were never the same, haunted by nightmares of the cursed crew and the treasure that brought doom to all who sought it. And so, the legend of the ghost ship lived on, a reminder that some treasures are better left buried and some curses can never be broken.